who weave words and they get the people thinking, you know, that they're going to get in office and make changes and do all types of things that's going to make life better for them. And then years and years go by and it's the same old argument, the same old cloak and dagger show, right? So what I want to say to the people right now is, let's pay attention to some of the common issues that we have. And when I say common issues, I'm talking about, I don't care, you know, what religious group you are with. I don't care what ethnic group who you have allegiance to. I don't care what corporation, what business. I don't care where you are in relation to the food chain. What are the common issues that exist in America that we see just ignored? Okay, they are just ignored by the government. The most common issue that is ignored by this government, that is at every dining table in this country, is the drug problem. All right. We live in a country that has had a drug problem for a long time, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. It's getting worse, you know, and the major problems, the major drugs that we're dealing with right now are coming from a place that we know exactly where it's coming from. China is shipping into this country fentanyl by the metric ton. And I mean thousands of metric tons of these pills. They are shipping in gallons and gallons and thousands of pounds of this powder and this liquid K2 that got our young people, you know, running around the streets acting like animals. And I mean literally. I don't mean that their behavior. I mean that they're barking like dogs and purring like cats and trying to swim in concrete as if they were fish in water, you know. And China is sending this stuff over here, and the United States of America is acknowledging it while doing nothing. They're doing nothing about it. I'm constantly asking the question. And the reason why I keep asking this question is because I want to see the citizens of the United States of America, I want to see all of the social media influencers start to publicly make a demand to these government officials that they address this issue with China. I want you to make a demand. Why can you find a reason to bomb anybody if you're not bombing China for flooding this country with this fentanyl that's killing, like they said on the news today? I heard it on the news today that over 100,000 American citizens are dying a year from fentanyl overdose in this country. Over 100,000. My child, my son, who was a normal young man, good young Moorish American Muslim, 4 years ago, smoked some K2, and now he is paranoid, schizophrenic with agoraphobia. And for y'all who don't know what agoraphobia means, that's when an individual is afraid to leave out the house because of this K2. You know, a lot of us, you know, we seeing the young guys and the young women in the streets. We seeing them every day, and they doing things, and we like, man, what the freak done got into them? It's the K2. It's these other synthetic drugs. Okay, these drugs is coming into our country, and then we got these politicians who are doing nothing about it. And I'm like, this is a common issue. This issue does not know race. It does not know economic status. All it knows is it's like a spirit, like the spirit that Jesus was casting out in the book. All it wants is a host. It does not care who the host is. Okay. We see the president, what's his son? The Hunter Biden. Drug problem.
Yeah. He got crack in the White House.
Crack in the White House. And guess what? They can't say that Asiatic brought it there. They can't say we did it.
The drug is, you know, the whole drug problem is, first and foremost, when you look at America as a whole, America has always been the number one drug dealer to the world, right? So now we're looking at this new thing where these designer drugs, right, are overtaking the people because it's synthetic.
Yes.
And these synthetic drugs, it really does a true chemical imbalance on the body, on the mind, right? And so when we look at it, we're saying And a lot of parents, you know, a lot of families, a lot of us have lost someone who has overdosed or is, you know, like you say, you've been affected now. So many people have, you know, schizophrenia and manic depression, you know, and bipolar and all these different, you know, developmental disabilities. And, you know, just because of the drug intake and what they've taken in, and no one is doing anything about it.
No.
We as a people, if you're going to be going and you're going to be voting for people, and people are saying, we're going to do this and we're going to do this for you and we're going to do that for you, you got to begin to hold these people under contract. All right. So when I say you got to be able to hold them under contract, remember they provide all of these guarantees. So you want to provide these guarantees, and you're saying you want to do good business on our behalf. We need this contract in black and white. No
Yes,
more the days of the promises of what you're gonna do. We can go and look at Chicago right now, right? Brandon kept telling everybody in Chicago what he was going to do for everyone. You know, I'm going to do this. You know, it was our people who got Brandon put in that place.
that's right.
And now you look at Brandon. Brandon ain't got time for none of us. You know,
That's right.
Brandon is actually making sure that we get kicked out of the council meetings. He's making sure that we don't show up. I saw one brother with a fez on was crying down at Chicago City Hall because he was getting arrested because he out there protesting with the protesters, but he only one with the fez on. So they single him out. You know, so we gotta look at it and say, stop allowing these politicians to give you these blanket promises. If you're going to give me a promise, that means that you're giving me a guarantee. If you're going to give me a guarantee, we need it in black and white. We got to stop giving them this authority, because the authority that we're giving them is not helping their constituents at the end of the day. It's just allowing them to get a name for themselves, to get a nice little paycheck, a nice retirement, so that they can pay tuition and pay for their houses and vacations. And that's it.
Islam. Hey, listen, you just said a mouthful. Let me tell the people something that y'all probably didn't know, right? When I first was start to wake up, you know, when I started to say, you know what, let me get these scales off of my eyes. Let me demonstrate Jesus on myself, right? I would ask myself over and over again, how did I get where I was? Okay, because now we demonstrating the lessons from the Buddha. The Buddha demonstrate, you know, we got to understand our suffering so that we can stop the suffering. So I was like, how did I find myself here? And I'm walking around inside the prison, and I go to the chow hall where you see all of the wardens, the AWs and the warden, they standing up there. And I'm looking at these jokers, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, I'm locked up for selling dope, and, you know, I was making a lot of money. Sheikies. And I'm sitting there looking, and I'm like, well, you know what? I was making more money every day than they make every week. Okay. Yet and still, they are all millionaires while I'm sitting here locked up broke. What happened? Okay. So in my questioning of myself, then me asking myself that question, then I start to really study, and I say, well, get the freak out of here. The doggone warden in the prison is getting paid the same thing that the Speaker of the House is getting paid. The Speaker of the House, this is the second most powerful office in government. How is the warden making the same thing as the Speaker of the House? So now I start to delve deeper into the actual pay structure, because these people is supposed to be compensated according to their responsibility. Now, this tells you about a warden getting paid the same thing that the Speaker of the House is getting paid. It tells you that to the people whose job it is to decide how much they get paid, that they consider the warden's job to be equally as important as the Speaker of the House. So now I'm saying, why? How is it that this warden's job or duty or responsibility is co-equal to the Speaker of the House? And then you start to look and you say, well, the wardens, these CEOs of these corporations called prisons, okay? Each prison is a corporation, and the warden is the chief executive officer over these corporations. And they employ all of these people who make up a large portion of the middle class of the United States of America. Now, this is one thing that no politician wants to happen while they are in office. This is the one thing that affects, them and their career, and that's the unemployment rate. You always hear them talk about who did what for the middle class. And the reason why is because the middle class does what? They the ones who lend the government the most money. Listen to what I said. They lend the government the most money. In their 401ks, they Roth IRAs, they storing up money in the banks and paying all this exuberant interest on their mortgage loans. And all this is lending the government money. So these wardens, in making sure that people who look like you and I, who they are warehousing for the purpose of employing these individuals. Okay, this is why they're warehousing them. They're warehousing us, our children, our young people, for the purpose of employing these individuals. Okay, and then we look up and we say, you got this guy. I'm gonna go back to him again. You got this Donald Trump guy saying, I did more for the black people, the so-called black people. I signed the First Step Act. Okay, and people look at the First Step Act, and as a prisoner, of course, anything that'll get you up out the joint, you like, yeah, bet, let me get that. Do you understand me? You like, let me get that. But the First Step Act was inevitable. I'm going to tell you why the First Step Act was inevitable. For people who did time, who do decades in prison, the majority of those individuals is not what y'all think it is. You don't just go into prison and see, 95% of the prison population exercising and eating right. That's not the case. The majority of the guys in prison are wasting away. Guys go into the prison young, healthy. Then the next thing you know, they got a bag of medicine this big, okay? That bag of medicine, it starts to cost too much money. So now when they was first creating these laws, there was to house, and to hold people for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in life, they wasn't considering that they was going to have to start buying this medicine. They wasn't considering the medical care, the psychological, the mental health issues that was going to come about because of these sentences. Because of the stress that was placed on these people whose bodies, they just can't digest the idea that I'm fixing to get ready to do decades in jail. It starts to cause disease. Okay, so they had to get these guys out, or else their institution will no longer be producing money because it's costing too much. All right, but I want to show the people a clip, because I just kind of, I don't want to get away from the issue that we all share, which is the drug problem. I don't want to get away from that. So I want to demonstrate that prior to the so-called war on drugs, there was no drug problem in the United States of America. So the war on drugs was actually the same thing as as a doctor who creates patients. So I want to introduce y'all to the guy who started the war on drugs, this Harry Anslinger guy.
The most influential man no one's ever heard of is a guy called Harry Anslinger. He took over the Department of Prohibition just as alcohol prohibition is ending. He was a government bureaucrat. And he's got this big department full of corrupt agents with nothing really to do. And he invented the modern drug war to keep this department in business. And he was really driven by two really strong hatreds, a hatred of addicts and a hatred of African Americans. And the story you referred to is a story right from his start. When he's 10, or I think it might be 11, he grew up in a place called Altoona in Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, and when drugs were legal. And near where he lived, there was a farmer whose wife was an addict. And one day he went there, and the wife was in a state of distress. She was screaming, and the farmer said, take the horse and cart, go as quick as you can to the pharmacy, buy her some opiates. So he didn't really understand what that meant, but he goes there as quick as he can. He goes in, he buys it, he comes back, he gives it to the wife, he gives the drugs to the wife, she takes them, she recovers. But he remembered this as a profoundly traumatic experience. And I think in a way he was like chasing that scream across the world. He was determined from that point on to physically eradicate these drugs from the world. The tragedy of Harry Anslinger is he created a lot more screams in his turn.
Okay, I want to keep talking about him, but I just want to pick up on something you just said. Before, to turn the century, turn the 20th century, drugs are flowing freely. There's no rules. There's no war on drugs. There's no laws about them. They're just flowing freely.
It's really hard to reconstruct if you want.
So see, the Harry Anslinger guy, was the head of the first federal drug enforcement agency, right? So this guy's job at the time was actually to make sure that doctors was not prescribing too much medicine or over medicating patients and stuff, because selling medicine was a way that dirty doctors was supplement their income. So that's why this guy actually got his job. And he only had initially like 2 or maybe 3 employees in that department, because they was, just to look after, check and make sure that the doctors were following the governmental regulations when it came to the practice of medicine. But what happened was he realized, like, man, you know what? I'm not going to be able to feed my family soon, because this agency might actually get shut down. They might actually say, hey, well, we don't need you. So in order for him to, to create a need for the Drug Enforcement Agency, he had to create a drug problem. He had to create a war on drugs. So with drugs flowing freely and everybody using drugs and it's not being an issue, it was like, well, how can I convince the people in power that there is a need for an agency to actually go out and stop people from selling drugs and using drugs? And, how do I do this? Where he had to attack something that was already under attack, and he had to, exaggerate a hatred that already existed, which was the hatred of Asiatic people in the United States of America, the fear of Asiatic people in the United States of America. One of the major arguments that he posed, and this guy, he didn't just speak to Congress, he went to the UN, and he actually convinced the United Nations and all of the nations that was a part of the United Nations to start a war on drugs in all of their countries. And he did this by saying that, the drugs made the European women love the Asiatic man. It made the Asiatic men impossible to stop by the police. He was the first creator of the super predator that Joe Biden them came later on talking about. He the one who gave them this type of language. He the one who laid out the blueprint for this type of approach and this type of, approach to politics. All right. Was this Harry Anslinger guy. And right now today, we are still suffering the consequences of a doctor who created patients, because we know the taboo. A lot of, for our young people, our young kids right now, a lot of them, they might enjoy the high, but they enjoy the hiding and getting high even more. One thing about psychology and drugs that psychologists know as a fact: less than 20% of the drug addicts in the world are actually addicted to the chemical effect of the drug. Less than 20%. The most people who use drugs are utilizing the drug as a coping mechanism, a way to deal with a separate issue, which is in most cases a trauma that they have experienced at some point in their life that they do not know how to process. You understand me? And these are things that everybody in government know. Everybody know. The government, they got psychologists who advise them. They got economists who advise them. They have lawyers who advise them. They have the real experts behind the scenes who advise the actors. But the actors have been given power to say, well, you know what, that's not going to get me reelected, so I'm not going to address it.
Even to the veggie back or camelback off of what you're saying, right? So he got a lot of his lessons and expertise from Darwin and Charles Darwin's cousin, right? Francis Galton, who they call the father of eugenics, right?
Yes.
And then Galton's student, Melvin Hershkovitz, right? And then his student, Franz Boas, right? And then later on, Franz Boas, he got a little bit of, he got some of us to even help to further, I'm going to tell y'all how deep it is, to further the agenda of eugenics and the hurt and harm and the war on us as a people. Because what they did was Franz Boas, he went and he got Zora Neale Hurston, right? So he got Zora Neale Hurston, and who was a part of the Federal Writers Project. Remember, during the Great Depression, it was nothing for the artists, the writers to do. So what they did was to put them in the workforce. They said, we're going to create the Federal Writers Project. And they created a lot of lies, and a lot of things about, us that wasn't true. Now, Melvin Hershkovitz and Zora Neale Hurston, you also have them coming back where, later on you have your Dr. John Henry Clark, who's right there at Columbia University, that's getting the same exact, studies, but now is, we got to go back to Africa, and we got to love Africa, and there's nothing wrong with the continent of Africa, but even the people that come from the continent of Africa, they don't call themselves Africans. They call themselves by the name of their nations.
That's right.
Islam.
Islam.
So, this whole program, this eugenics program, for us to hate ourselves and not be who we are, this program to, think that another people is better than us, and put them in, their stories and their livelihoods over ours, is a part of this whole entire eugenics program. Yeah.
Islam. You know something? Um, when I was first coming into the knowledge of self, that first year, the first year I joined the Moorish Temple of America, right? Between 2007 and 2008, I read over 100 different books, and a lot of the books that I was reading that I actually studied, a lot, with my comrades who, because I came in, it was a group of us, but we read a lot of the Elder Baruti books, Sappho, and you know what I mean, and Baruti used to be a professor at Morehouse, right? Baruti said to the staff, the administration there at Morehouse, he said, one day there are going to be students walking around this campus in high heels and carrying purses. And they fired him. Now, this attack on somebody who brings forth this type of truth, why would this is an all male school? It's an all male school. So what is wrong with his warning, right? Well, it goes to politics. This group of people, and with all love to everybody, I'm just pointing out the political witchcraft. This group of people at that time were amassing the power that we see them wield today. All right, because there's power in unity, and they unify, and they have amassed a great deal of power. Well, they were coming into that power at the time, so it was not politically healthy. It was not politically healthy for them to have a professor in their institution talk like this. Truth or falsehood. It was not politically healthy. So we seen the politicalization of the well-being of our children just manifest with the firing of such an incredible teacher and a scholar from an institution where his services were well needed, where it was well needed. I remember when I read Amos Wilson's Black on Black Violence. All right. Amos Wilson says in Black on Black Violence that history is political. And this is what you're talking about, Sheikis. This is what you're talking about when we start to see all of the African studies, classes that popped up all over, America, and every single solitary college in this country. African study classes, Egyptology, and all these things, this directing of our attention and our search for ourselves and all of these lost places and all of these scattered places. I mean, we just did a podcast, We Are the Atlanteans. That was episode 1, Paradigm Shift in the podcast. We Are the Atlanteans. And that podcast came about because I wanted to bring, to the attention of the Asiatic people that when we are searching for the founders of civilization, we are searching for the creators of the sciences that we see manifest all of the things that provide us with a comfortable opportunity to live and to do our work today. When we look for the inventors of that science, all you got to do is look in the mirror. Don't listen to the individuals who are telling you that the planet and everything great in the planet was created by aliens from outer space. And definitely don't listen to the Asiatic people who propagate this nonsense. The Malachi Z. Yorks of the world, who want individuals to believe that some great superior race of people called Anunnakis came down and created everybody. That's nonsense. That's bullcrap. Your ancestors created everything that's worth your attention. Everything worthy of your study was created by people who look just like you, people whose DNA is the same as your DNA, people whose blood right now pumps through your veins. You understand me? So when you want to talk about, the Atlanteans, a lost race of superior intellectual beings, that's you, man. That's you. And the only thing lost is the knowledge of self that it would take to go inside and to unlock this intelligence and then to utilize it today for yourself. The Grand Sheik of the Moorish Temple of America, Temple number 2, Sheikh E. Rice Bey, today, just today, he was talking about this in Sunday school. He spoke about this, He spoke about ones not knowing the truth about man. What the truth is about man is that God has put inside of man his own spirit. And every attribute of God is within you. It's in your blood. The Bible says that the spirit is in the blood. So your heart is pumping this blood throughout your entire being. So any intelligence that you seek is there to be found. The Bible and the Quran. The Bible says that God said, let us make man in our image and after our own likeness. And he gave man dominion. The Quran says that Allah says to the angels and the jinn that he is going to place a vicegerent in the earth. The Holy Quran of the Moorish Temple of America says that the human seed that came forth from the heart of Allah was foreordained to be the Lord of the plane of soul and of the plane of things made manifest. Listen, it didn't say that an alien from outer space had dominion. Allah didn't say that he was giving the Anunnaki, he was making them vicegerent. The Quran didn't say that some alien from outer space or some people that's lost out in the middle of the ocean somewhere had the authority over the plane of soul and the plane of things made manifest. In all of these scriptures, Allah said he gave you that power. So when you got these individuals who've been paid, these individuals who've been brought here just to teach you different, just to redirect your attention to something outside of yourself, know that they are your enemy and they casting a spell on you. And today, these ones who we look at and who we think are the real movers and the shakers and the shifters of the paradigms for real, no, man, they actors, political spell casters, warlocks and witches. And they using microphones and cameras as magic wands. But we got microphones and we got cameras and we got individuals who know how to work these things, like the brother who's sitting over there right now hosting this demonstration. I mean, working, he doing his thing too. And he just let me do what I do good. And that's what I do. I talk. I communicate information, I process scripture, and I minister to the people. Moorish master student, Brother Maurice Pennington Bay. I got one more thing I want to share with y'all. I want y'all to understand this racist joker, Harry Anslinger. I want Anslinger, whatever the freak y'all call that chump. I want y'all to check this clip out.
So let me bring Anslinger into this, because what evidence did he have then that drug use is going to cause social problems? You say before this there wasn't really a lot of evidence of that on the ground.
It's such an important question, because actually, if you'd said to me why were drugs banned, right? I would have assumed it would be because it caused social problems, because they were worried that kids would use drugs, or they're worried about addiction. Actually, that's a really minor part of the debate. When I went and looked through his archives and read everything from the time that I could find from the time, it was overwhelmingly a completely different cause that we don't think about now, although it's still very relevant to the drug war. It was founded in a race panic. Harry Anslinger and a huge number of people at the time were convinced African Americans and Chinese Americans were using drugs, forgetting their place and attacking white people. You read the stuff at the time and it is shocking. The official statements like, the cocaine N-word sure is hard to kill. This belief, of course we know that African Americans were angry because they were being treated appallingly. And the way I tell the story in the book mainly is through the story of how Harry Anslinger stalked and helped to kill Billie Holiday. Story that blew me away when I found out, and I went and interviewed a lot of her friends and tracked down whoever I could find. That in 1939, Billie Holiday stands on stage in New York City and she sings the song Strange Fruit, which a lot of people watching will know is a song against lynching. Her goddaughter Lorraine Feather said to me, you've got to understand how shocking it is to have an African-American woman standing up in front of a white audience singing a song about lynching. Billie Holiday wasn't even allowed to walk through the front door of that hotel. She had to go through the service elevator. And that night, according to her biographer Julia Blackburn, Harry Anslinger's agents say to Billie Holiday, stop singing this song.
Go ahead. Because she was on drugs, right?
She was a heroin addict. She had grown up in Baltimore when it was a segregated city and she wasn't allowed in a lot of places. And she had promised herself she was never going to bow her head to any white man. And the Federal Bureau of Narcotics is very interesting. Around the time that Harry Anslinger finds out Billie Holiday is a heroin addict, he finds out Judy Garland is a heroin addict, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. He tells her to take slightly longer vacations and tells her she's going to be fine. Billie Holiday gets treated very differently. Harry Anslinger hated employing African Americans, but you couldn't really send a white guy into Harlem to stalk Billie Holiday. It'd be kind of obvious. So he employs an African American agent called Jimmy Fletcher, who follows her around for 2 years, stalks her everywhere. Actually, Billie Holiday was so amazing, he fell in love with her. And his whole life, he felt ashamed of what he did. He busts her. She's put on trial. She said the trial was called the United States versus Billie Holiday, and that's how it felt. She's sent to prison. When she gets out, this is the most awful part, there's very few places she can perform because you needed a cabaret performer's license to perform anywhere where alcohol was served, and Anslinger makes sure she doesn't get it. Her friend Yolanda Bavan said to me, what is the cruelest thing you can do to a person? It's to take away the thing they love. Billie Holiday can't sing. You know, she can find very few places. She relapses on addiction. When she's in her early 40s, she collapses, and she's taken to a hospital in New York, and they turn her away because she's an addict. She's taken to another hospital. She's convinced that Anslinger's men aren't finished with her. She says to one of her friends, they're going to kill me in there. Don't let them, they're going to kill me.
So, with that being the case, I want the Moors to just, wake up. Like the Prophet Noble Ali said, wake up, you sleepy Moors. Wake up and wake up all the people around you. You know what I mean? Start to shake them. And then, the shaking comes with communicating the truth. As we could see, it ain't nothing changed from back then with the Harry Anslingers of the world. We got those same jokers right now in politics. That same spirit right now is still roaming, but we got, individuals like the Grand Governors, K. Glover, who has, mastered their language, So before we end Paradigm Shifting the Podcast episode number 2, I want the Grand Governors to tell y'all, a little bit about what she do, so y'all can come and get this sister. Y'all need her.
Indeed, definitely. So I am one of those who came in on the vibratory rate of I wanted to save the world, and that's exactly what I did. Assist in doing my part in saving the world. So you can definitely reach out to me, 844-726-3936, or you can go to our website, and that is amexem, ENTLLC.com. Again, that is amexem, ENTLLC.com. You can reach out to us, and we'll be able to assist you in pretty much any way that we can. I yield.
Islam, Islam, Islam. Maurice Pennington Bay, Moorish Master Student, author of Awakening the Sleeping Giant. As y'all can see, 25% of all profits from that made from that book go to St. Jude. You know, because I just believe that what those people do over there at St. Jude is amazing. You know, I don't know if you know, some of y'all probably haven't really thought about it, but just consider you are a parent. You know, consider you are a parent and your child has cancer. We don't really understand, because we are not going through that. But if your child has cancer, the one thing that your child needs more than anything else is your child needs you. So the cancer treatment is very, very expensive. It's very expensive. So now you need to go to work. You need to make money to be able to help your child. And St. Jude, they save people from going through that. Like they provide all of this health care, for free, and they allow for these parents to actually be there with their child, which is just as important as the treatment for the child. So when I first became aware of St. Jude, they just touched me in such a way where I was sitting inside of the dismal crypt and I was trying to figure out, like, how can I help? How can I contribute to what they're doing? So right now in the position that I'm in, the best way that I can contribute to helping them is by, giving 25% of all proceeds that come from the sale of my book, so if you want to help St. Jude, one of the ways you can help St. Jude, go out and copy the book. On top of copying the book for that purpose is very, very dope. Yeah, like my grand governess, I am dope. I'm Maurice Pennington Bay. I'm the master student. This paradigm shifting the podcast. Y'all know we out of here. So check out the outro. I'm gone.